a lot of people think it's the blue collar jobs that will go, but it's lawyers, it's doctors. It's not just the lesser paid or the lesser trained. This is all levels. It's a really serious concern for society.
Today, my guest is Jeffrey Cole. He is an absolute expert in the topic of disruption. From a business standpoint, one of the adages that I always use is the only constant is change. Disruption is all around us. And Jeffrey has studied this impact of disruption. And so if you take a little bit of time today to listen to Jeffrey Cole and his wisdoms of studying disruption over the years, I think you will learn a great deal and you will walk away from this conversation a smarter person. Well, good day to you, Jeffrey Cole. I've known you for quite some time. I first saw you speak at an industry event, and my mouth was just like wide open, like this man is encyclopedic, and have always enjoyed dialogue with you.
The feeling is very mutual. I always thought
Bless
that
your
Peter was
heart.
one of the true leaders, one of the real intellectual and business leaders.
I thank you, good sir. I thank you. So, can you give us the 60-second version of what your career has been and what is your mission in terms of helping marketers and people understand what is going on at the highest levels of business?
I was a TV guy. I used to make television. And in the world of television, the most powerful medium ever invented, I was always taught that we blew it. Television was the only mass medium we knew ahead of time was going to be a mass medium. There was no question in the 1940s that radio listeners were going to love radio with pictures. So in the 90s, I became convinced that the internet was going to be far more important than television. So we decided we wanted to take advantage of the opportunity with digital that we missed with television. We started tracking the internet. We started in the US. This is the university part. We've done this for 27 years in 35 countries, and we sit on incredible data. But I'm not a data guy, I'm a storyteller. So I would tell that story, I would share our data with government leaders, with a number of presidents, prime ministers, but I really enjoyed working with CEOs and companies, telling them what they needed to know. And that was, it wasn't my plan. I developed a whole business telling CEOs of studios, of media companies, what they needed to know about the future, where change was coming, what the threats were. And then I wanted to roll up my sleeves and do the work with them to help them prepare and be ready for change and understand. I didn't want to just tell them and walk away. So that's what I've done most of my professional life.
That's awesome.
And most of that 27 years of stuff is on our website and is free at digitalcenter.org. Anyone who wants to look at reports or analysis or columns.
Great. You sort of teased out this idea that you needed to tell people sort of what to do because all around them, disruption was happening. And as a matter of fact, you are about to publish a new book. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why you decided to compile 27 years of study and knowledge into a repository of how people should be thinking about disruption?
Well, first, if the title of the book is Disruptors at the Gate, when trailblazers, visionaries, and two guys in a garage turn the world upside down. So it's how to respond. But this is not a book that was useful for me career-wise to write. This book poured out of me. This is a lifetime of embracing this topic. It just had to be written. I had no choice. It's written in a journalism history style, and it really tries to understand where disruption comes from. First lesson of dealing with disruption is to expect to be disrupted, to be ready for disruption. So you want to know where it comes from, but the complicated part of that is it comes from unexpected places, out of nowhere, and turns the business model upside down. The disruption of the retail business should have come from Walmart or Target not a guy in his garage in Seattle. The disruption of the taxi industry should have come from Yellow Cab or Hertz or Avis, not a couple of computer nerds in the Silicon Valley who knew nothing about transportation but had great algorithms for creating an app. So I wanted to help people understand where disruption comes from. And then the sad lesson is people don't usually see disruption until it's there, till the disruptors are at the gate. And I wanted to talk about how they can react because most people react poorly. Most people don't know. The first stage of disruption for most companies or people is denial, to refuse to believe it's a problem. The music industry. The music industry had a business model that was nothing short of extortion. It said, this is up until the internet, said, you want 2 songs? Great. You have to spend $15 and buy 12 songs. And when their fans came to the record companies and said, we don't want to pay for music we don't want anymore, the music company said, no, we're not going to give you any other options because we like making you pay for music you don't want. And when all of a sudden Napster appeared and you could get the 2 songs you wanted for free, and the people didn't necessarily, there always are some people who will steal. People were willing to pay, but they didn't have any way to pay for those 2, so they reluctantly stole the music. And so disruption is coming from a different place, a whole new way of doing things. The disruption of Kodak, most of us know their entire business. For most people over the age of 50, they've spent $50,000 in their lifetime on cameras, film, processing, photo albums. All of a sudden, the business model for all of that goes away, and Kodak doesn't know how to respond. And they don't literally disappear, but they've gone from 25 years ago being one of the 3 best known brand names on planet Earth. Was there anybody who couldn't identify them by their orange and yellow colors? They were this equivalent to Coke, and now they've become irrelevant.
So clearly, these are examples of where companies miss the boat, right? And big time. Is there anyone who's been able to stave off disruption and do it well?
There are a handful of companies that survive disruption. Best Buy, the best current example, Best Buy watched its competition disappear. Circuit City on the verge.
Crazy Eddie. Yeah.
Yeah. All and Best Buy was clearly going to be next because they would this is competition from Amazon. People would come into Best Buy, spend an hour with their knowledgeable sales associates in big box stores with expensive rent in expensive areas. They'd spend an hour asking question after question about television sets and then not even have the decency sometimes to walk out of the store before they pull out their phones and go buy it from Amazon.
Right.
So
Right.
Best Buy had to figure out a whole new way of doing business, of dividing the store into zones instead of a TV zone and a computer zone and a refrigerator zone. They divided into Apple, Intel, Microsoft, Sony, and then they charged those companies rent. Either they would put their own Best Buy employees in the Sony section and charge Sony, or Sony could bring their own employees. So those are just some of what we learned about disruption. But the key is to expect to be disrupted and understand whether your business model is still viable. The one company that really understood this probably better than anybody, expect to be disrupted, was Google. Google came out of the garage where Larry and Sergey created a new algorithm for search that almost could read your mind. It was just head and shoulders better than any other search company. Larry and Sergey were well aware they didn't invent search. There had been Yahoo, Ask Jeeves,
Alta
Alta.
Vista. Yeah.
They knew they didn't invent search. They just did it better.
Yep.
From the day they started, they were aware somebody else could come along and do to them what they did to Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves, and they were ready. They were expecting it. It took 22 years. Google, up until last year, had over 90% market share in every country on earth except three. But 22 years later, that competitor, that guy who wanted to do to Google what Google did to the others, came along and it called itself ChatGPT. And Google has really responded pretty darn well.
Yes, with Gemini. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you talk about industry level disruption, but the other part of disruption is how consumers respond. I mean, in your book, you pointed to three particular things. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that technology, generally the driver of disruption, has on the public psyche, and how does it work its way into how people shift from behavior in one particular way one day to a different state of behavior days to weeks to months to years later?
That's a really powerful question. Well, first, mass disruption usually occurs historically every 150 to 200 years. The Industrial Revolution, changes like that. We've gone through three major planet-wide disruptions in the last 25 years. That's unprecedented. That's the internet or digital, which changed everything. I argued in the late 90s there wasn't a business or activity that would not be affected by the internet. Most would be transformed, and I still underestimated its influence, how it's changed everything. The second was COVID, the disruption we were forced into, and we were forced to do things we didn't want to do in many instances, such as give up cash. We were the country that still wouldn't get rid of the penny. We only did just in the last few months. And merchants didn't want to see us in our cash. They wanted paid before we even got there with our credit cards so they could put the packages of the food out front. COVID forced us into telemedicine. Almost nobody wanted telemedicine. When they wanted to see a doctor, they wanted to see a doctor. Those were two examples of things that we were forced into that we liked. And those were disruptions that will continue. We were forced to do things in COVID we didn't like, going to school online, but we found we didn't like it. We didn't learn as well. And then there were other changes, but COVID disrupted everything. And it's the only disruption we've ever seen. I think I call that subtitle of that chapter on COVID, borrowing from the movie, Everything, Everywhere, Everyone, All at Once. Normally, with the internet, we have different levels of adoption. We're still seeing that with AI, people who resist it. The internet, we had no choice. I actually wrote one of my favorite pieces based on It's a Wonderful Life, trying to imagine what would COVID have been like if the internet had never been invented.
It would have been a disaster.
There would have been no Netflix. And then the third disruption, which is, of course, we all rightly talk about, is AI, which may have the biggest impact of all. And, just an interesting quick comparison between the internet and AI. The internet started with so much hope and optimism. And then as we used it, we saw the negative: hate speech, bullying, polarization, disinformation. AI is exactly the opposite. AI starts with almost nothing but fear on most people's part. But the fear of loss of jobs, which I think is real.
Sure. Yeah.
24% of the people we talk to, in a survey, say they think the AI means the end of humankind. That's the message we saw from 2001 and HAL and Skynet in
Terminator. Yeah.
if the internet started with hope, AI has started with pessimism or fear, and some of those fears have some legitimacy, but the power that AI gives us is just mind-boggling.
Well, I think, with anything, it takes time to sort of walk through. To take that to sort of the next sort of level, we already know, but we don't know exactly all the ways that AI is going to impact us. One of the key points that you had in the book was that this whole two guys in a garage metaphor. If you were to look into a crystal ball, is there a metaphor that you think might fit the convergence of AI on our lives?
I think so. I mean, I love the image of the two guys in a garage, and that's a real image, incidentally. You go to the Silicon Valley, there are three garages that are historical landmarks: the Larry Page, Sergey Brin garage for Google, the Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak garage for Apple, and back in the 30s, the Hewlett and Packard garage. Incidentally, Hewlett Packard got its start selling oscilloscopes. Their first order for an oscilloscope came from a guy in Glendale, California, who started his company in a garage, Walt Disney. So I love the garage. What the internet did, we know this, is it leveled the playing field or the barrier to entry to all these businesses. All of a sudden, anybody could edit their own movies or make movies. Anybody could publish their own books. We really leveled the playing field and made almost everything less expensive and easier to do, and disenfranchised a lot of big companies who used to do that for us. I think what AI is going to do is everyone everywhere doing anything they want all by themselves, not needing. It's going to eliminate those barriers completely.
So, just as an interesting viewpoint, in the book, you talk really about the two guys. It's two guys actually making all of the decisions. There may be 15 people in the garage, but two are making all the decisions. And now you're saying that a singular person armed with AI can actually chart his or her own course, which actually brings the said barriers down yet another notch. Are we going to see an explosion of AI options?
Yes, I think very much so. I think it almost eradicates. There is still a collaborative function in testing out ideas. We may not see the end of teams, but it absolutely AI is going to let us do this all by ourselves. It's it,
Unbelievable.
it it's
Unbelievable.
it's giving us all the human power that an employment support from people. That's why people are losing jobs, because we just don't need as many outside people. As a society, we're going to have to face a really important issue. Do we want to employ people that we don't have to employ to do the work, but because we want to keep our our economy and compassion going? There's an old joke, and it's an anti-union joke, and I'm not anti-union, but the joke is powerful. It's the old joke about a developer building a big skyscraper, and he and the union foreman go to the construction site. And when they get to the construction site, the union foreman sees a guy in a bulldozer clearing land. And he says to the developer, "Don't you realize 10 men with shovels could be doing that work?" And the developer looks at him and says, "Why not 100 men with spoons?" Forget the political, but that's the question we're going to have to face as a society. Do we, because AI will mean one guy in a bulldozer.
Yeah, I just having a conversation with a friend last week, and just talking about the initial impact of AI and doing things that we sort of do in media and advertising. If AI can really, particularly agentic, um, do all of those entry level jobs, then how does one actually jump in midstream, right, and expect to have an impact?
It's a really interesting question. We'll always, and there are not good answers. And a lot of people think it's the blue collar jobs that will go, because the first ones in automation threatened were drivers because of self driving cars, checkers because of checkout, but it's lawyers, it's doctors, legal research, associates, all that research where they used to go to the library and hunt for cases, done instantaneously, not in a library. Uh, we've known for 10 years that machines can read x rays better than humans. They can see nuances that humans can't. telesurgery. So it's not just the lesser paid or the lesser uh, trained. This is all levels. It's a really serious concern for society. It's going to mean looking at things like guaranteed basic income, which is a political fiasco. But even if we subsidize people not to work, and I think in this current polarization, that's unlikely, even if people had enough money to be housed and fed, it's still a massive problem because what's our purpose in life? What do we do when we get up in the morning? And without purpose, even though we may have enough money, without purpose, we watch too much television, play video games, drink too much, and get depressed, and it's a real problem. But there's no question the job market is changing, and we need to be on top of this. We need a government that is really deeply involved in understanding these issues. We need a private sector that is really committed. Right now, there's very little regulation. It's the Wild West.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. If we're putting brands and consumers together in a way that's sort of net positive, right, for consumers in commerce, and you look at the current sort of situation, the tech companies, in particular, are under enormous political pressure these days. We used to have a lot more focus on brand safety context, and that's changed quite a bit in the current environment. Is there any way that AI helps us in this advertising business get back to balancing profit, consumer trust, and corporate responsibility?
Yeah, the answer is an emphatic yes. The only caveat is going to be with fewer people. But we know, you've been in the business, you're a veteran now, and anyone who's been in the business more than 15 years is a veteran. You know that for brands, it's not just about buy my soft drink or use the product. People now want to relate to the brands. They want to feel that they are good citizens, where issues like the environment and corporate governance and diversity still important. And we judge all these brands by much more than just does it work. And I think AI really lets us build relationships between brands and individuals that weren't as possible in the past. So I think it's very much a net positive. Sadly, in the business you and I spent time in together, there are going to be fewer people at the agencies. We know that the holding companies are very nervous. Are they, what's their purpose anymore? I don't think they're disappearing, but they may be considerably smaller. But I think for brands, their ability to identify their customers, reach them, build a relationship with them, be what their customers want. I think that's better than more exciting than ever.
Great. Great. I love the optimism. Love the optimism. In the context of AI, you talked about seeing is no longer believing. What does it mean in terms of how business effectiveness gets evaluated and measured, and how does it impact consumer trust?
Yeah. Well, we grew up with a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Hmm.
Seeing is believing. As recently as 2 years ago, the New York Times used to run 5 images and say, "Pick the ones that are AI," and most of us could do it close to 100% accuracy. We actually enjoyed making fun of AI because it was so obvious that it was AI. That's gone. There's still some crude AI, but AI, you literally can't tell with much of it anymore. And that means we just don't know what to believe. Sometimes the images are so silly that we know it's AI but that's not the kind we're talking about. Teachers at universities were very proud that they could detect AI very quickly. Those days are gone.
Mm.
We now are gonna have to build up entirely new detection systems. or we're going to have to assume that we can't trust our eyes whatsoever. But what does that do to a news program? What does that do when they're given tape and we don't know what's real? We used to be able to, throw politicians out of office when we had tape of them taking money or doing things that were inappropriate. Now the answer to anytime any of that appears is that's just fake. That's AI. This is changing the world, and we don't know how we're going to adapt. And it is really pretty scary. That part we haven't sorted out yet.
Well, Jeffrey, thank you to share your numerous wisdoms.
Thank you, Louis. This stuff changes so much. We should do it again.
You've got it. We'll get it all lined up. I can't wait. Wasn't that an insightful conversation? If you want to watch another interview with another captivating guest, click the video on the screen. YouTube thinks you'll like it. Thank you for watching Defend and Deliver, brought to you by the Brand Safety Institute. I'm your host, Louis Jones. And until next time, keep content worth consuming.